Audio Jungle.
How to be the top 2% who win in the stock market. While there are a lot of things that go towards making a business successful, there are few that can help an investor or an entrepreneur make it in the world of finances as much as shaving a sure footing in the stock market. But the thing is, no matter how many years you spend trading, studying in business schools, or even learning from the best, very few people are able to make it to the top. But as it turns out, one of the people from the very top has revealed what it takes to get there. And that person is none other than the great investor of all time, Warren Buffett. And today we are going to take a look at what he thinks is required to become part of the stock market elite, whether as an investor or as a company owner. And if you watch until the end, we will also be revealing an excerpt from Warren's speech to a bunch of students that even the biggest businessman never reveals to anyone. So without further ado, let's jump right in. Now, there are a lot of ways to earn about business in the stock market, but none of them will never come close to the insight someone's experience provides us. This is why one of the ways Warren Buffett likes to teach some stock market principles is by telling us the stories of how other people won in their respective businesses. And one of the most important lessons he derives from almost all those stories is the importance of never getting deterred. I know it's a glitch, but the fact of the matter is, as long as you allow yourself to settle in where you are, you will never be able to move up in life. And while that is easy for us 20 years olds to say, the same can't be said for a lot of other folks. कहीं किसी की family responsibilities होती है, while other people get discouraged at their lack of experience and ability. But according to Mr. Buffett, as long as you are honest with yourself and keep trying to build yourself as a person and as a businessman, nothing will stop you or your ventures from making it in the stock market. One example of this he likes to cite is the story of a woman named Rose Blumkin. According to Buffett, Miss Blumkin was a Russian immigrant who had moved to the United States in 1917 without even knowing how to speak English, let alone knowing how to perform a business. But she had something that few people in the stock market ever realize: the importance of the desire to always build yourself as a person. As Buffett once told a group of students, as her oldest daughter went to school, she would come home, this daughter Frances, and she would teach her mother the words she learned in school that day. And over time, Rose kept trying to learn more and more while also following another of Buffett's principles, not being wasteful and saving money. And so, after more than 20 years of saving and learning, she had saved herself a grand total of $2,500, and this back in 1937. Making that sum worth over $50,000 today. But that wasn't all she had going for her either, because even after having saved that much money, she was also still as determined as ever. And with a spirit to build herself further, she went ahead and used that money to open a furniture store by the name of Nebraska Furniture Mart. And this is where her powers really came to shine. According to her grandson, now the one who runs the company, she worked 7 days a week, and when the shop was closed, she would still spend her time going out and looking at the competition, trying to find ways to improve her business. And that quote, she didn't believe in taking vacations and had no hobbies. And believe it or not, that's all it took. She didn't innovate. She didn't invent any new business techniques, and her company never even built its own designs. But through her sheer determination and willingness to work, she was able to build a business from personal savings that Warren Buffett later paid $60 million to get an 80% shares in. And since then, her business has only grown more and more. while she herself has never stopped working there, and that's why Buffett once told his company that I would rather wrestle grizzlies than compete with Mrs. B and her progeny. Now that is admittedly very intimidating advice, but that doesn't mean that if you are not able to put in as much effort as Mrs. B, you are not going to succeed. In fact, not only will putting a fraction of a determination towards your business help you, another thing to remember while doing business is not to get too hard set on one goal. Instead, as Buffett says, it's okay to take your time. Now, whether it is studying, working out, or anything worth achieving in life, I am sure that you and I have faced the same issue hundreds of times, which is that if you try something and the first attempt doesn't yield the results you hoped it would, you give up the thing entirely. And the same is even more true in the world of the stock market, where when people try to build a company and it doesn't make it in the market, they lose hope and think to themselves that they weren't capable of making it in the first place. But the thing is, almost no one out there actually does make it on the first try. In fact, many of the biggest, most successful people in the business all tried their hands at multiple things that failed before finding the one thing they are good at. In this regard, Warren Buffett likes to tell the story of American billionaire John C. Taylor, who became famous for his enterprise rent-a-car service. But what a lot of people doesn't actually know about him is that he failed not once but twice before starting this company. You see, unlike most businessmen who are born ambitious, Taylor was a pretty regular kid growing up. And even after school, he barely lasted 1 year in college before dropping out and choosing to join the army. But they rejected him on account of him having high fever. But he, undeterred, went ahead and tried to enlist in the Navy instead, where he was hired as a small-time pilot. And while he enjoyed a good career there, even that was short-lived, ending just after the Second World War. It was only after he had returned that he tried to make something of himself. His first venture was to try a delivery service, which went nowhere. So instead of being discouraged, he went ahead and got a job at a car leasing company. And while working there, he got interested in that business as well. And eventually, at the age of 35, he decided to become part owner of the car leasing company by cutting his salary in half and borrowing some spare money. But once again, the business went nowhere, as Buffett later described it. He had 7 cars, and the business was pretty slow. In fact, one of the things he did was whenever the phone rang, he let it ring 3 or 4 times, so people would think that he was very busy answering other phones. But instead of letting that slow him down or settling whatever business he was doing, he decided to change lanes once again. This time using some of the cars from his leasing company to start a car rental company, one which he named after the aircraft carrier he served on in the Navy, the USS Enterprise. And wouldn't you know it, in a matter of months, the business went from being a newcomer to outcompeting every other company in the market. And the main takeaway from that, according to Buffett, is that even if you don't get it the right first time, that is not reason enough to stop, because if you try hard and long enough, you too will eventually find your enterprise. That being said, it still leaves one question unanswered. Because if you keep trying like Mrs. B and don't get discouraged like John Taylor, you still need one last ingredient to help yourself win in the market as a business, and that is the value of good practice. Now, when talking about John Taylor's business, Buffett famously said that at age 40, he decided with 17 cars that he was doing to compete in the rental car business, and now he is taking on Hertz and Avis and National and people like that who have hundreds and hundreds of thousands of cars. And that more than that, he as a newcomer also had to face problems like the big companies having hooked all the important locations and them having better investments to back them up. And in a situation like that, I'm sure that you and I would immediately be discouraged and think to ourselves that the game is rigged or other excuses like that. So how did he do it? Well, who better to tell you that than Buffett himself?
He didn't invent artificial intelligence. He didn't do anything that, just like Mrs. B selling furniture, that any one of us could have entered those businesses. But he lived by the creed, basically, of delighting his customers and working with people and establishing the relationship with them so that they in turn would want to delight the customers. He couldn't go out there and take care of every rental car possibility, but he learned how to project himself and his attitude toward his fellow man and his desire, to make a friend out of every customer.
That's right. Even with all the odds stacked against him, with no prior experience with startups, and without any investment capital to begin with, John Taylor was able to succeed in the stock market just because he was able to create an experience that made customers to come back. The same goes for Mrs. B, who famously said that you can't sell it to the walls when talking about the importance of making sure the customer returns. And that is about it. You can take as many fancy tips as you want, but in the end, all that you really need is determination, courage to try, and try until you succeed, and ability to be honest and to build a kind experience. And that concludes Warren Buffett's analysis of what it takes to become part of the highest league of businessmen, and how we can learn from the likes of Rose Blumkin and John C. Taylor. And before we go, we would also love to hear which one of these two business people you knew about before watching this video. I hope you enjoyed watching this video, and if you did, be sure to leave a like and subscribe for more finance content. With that, take rest and I'll see you guys next time.